forget if it was Charlie Bouillon or Yancey Gillespie, one or the other was the bus driver. And when we got back, they pulled up to the grocery store and they said, no boys get off, all the girls get off the bus. So all the girls got off the bus, and we pulled up at that time, the cop shop, the fire department and the police department, all that was right there in that building there. It's a computer shop now. And we went in there and they herded all the boys in there. And Henry Studeman was there, that's Ann's daddy. And my daddy. They were all on the Port Aransas School Board and all this. And Henry Oulsey, and he was kind of leading the whole congregation, got us all in there. And they would say, okay, tell us what happened. We said, and nobody knew a thing. And I'll never forget, later on they finally let us all go home, and my dad, he said, you know, me and Henry were talking. Henry Studeman, Ann's daddy, said, you know, we really got a good bunch of boys growing up on this town right now. A good crop of them coming up right now. Said none of them would give up the other one or anything like that. And they were proud of us, you know, for being like that. But that's the only thing that comes to mind right quick. Thank you.
We're trying to get Johnny up here. But Bill, I'm glad it was a brand new car.
I came for moral support for Johnny Brunnery. His family's been here since when? What's the name of that ship? Busted up on the bar?
The Mayflower.
No, it's like the Mary. And anyway, Johnny's grandfather married the captain's daughter, and they've been here ever since. I guess I got a couple of stories. I'm from Aransas Pass, and these have been my buddies since I was about 13. They come over here and walk the oil pipelines to get to Harbor Island sometimes to ride the ferry. One of my stories, Mark Young got me over here. I said, I'm not from Port Aransas. He said, well, you've been coming over here long enough. We used to be down here and we'd go swimming where the boats were docked. I can't think of what it was called, Woody's or Mathews. Anyway, go to the restroom, it's like an outhouse with about 8 or 10 holes. And it was, you just did your business in the water, underneath. And of course, that's where we swam off the piers in there, too, in the harbor.
And they call them goldfish. Watch out for the goldfish.
I was trying to get Johnny, he didn't want to come, and I drug him over here. But one time, he had 2 uncles. And I guess I don't know how old I was, but I went with Johnny's dad, and maybe Johnny's brother, I don't know how many of us. And we went over to these 2 guys' house named Alfred and Godfrey, and these were these bachelor uncles. Papa's cousins, okay. Well, anyway, see, we get Johnny's input. Come on up here, Johnny.
Come on, Johnny.
But anyway, one of them, we got over there, he was practically blind, and he was sewing up a cast net, but he didn't wear any shoes, I guess. Anyway, his toenails curled up and were going back in the top of his foot, so that's why Johnny's dad went over, and we all went with him to cut the toenails. You got any more stories, John? And then Johnny, one time, I come over to Johnny's always building radios and rockets. And Johnny was making gunpowder, and he's used his mother's oven. She kept saying, you gonna blow the house up, Johnny? You gonna blow the house up? No. It didn't blow up, I'm surprised. But he was drying his gunpowder in her oven. Okay, I can't come up with any more stories. Come on, John.
He's the judge of San Patricio County, retired. So that's why he can talk so good.
Oh, another thing, Jimmy's talking about the other side, whatever, where ends. Another buddy of mine is Thomas Bowman. I guess there's nobody over here in the Bowman family anymore. Okay, well, they had a bar right next to the Rod and Gun. Sportsman Club, what's the name of that? Anyway, when I was a kid, we'd go in there and get Cokes, and they had a barmaid. Bill, kind of a lot showing, we'd go and get Coke. And then Thomas, my buddy, showed me, that's when the gambling was going on. Well, anyway, they had these gambling things, and we had the one-way bridges, and they had people collecting money, and everybody was on, including who's kin to the constable. Well, I'm telling it anyway, it's a long time. Anyway, when the Texas Rangers were making a raid, the guys at either end, Flower Bluff or Aransas Pass, call over here and let them know. Well, anyway, in Thomas's club, I don't know about Rod and Gun, but this stuff would fold up in the floor, and then it just looked like this floor here. Anyway, Thomas showed me those things. And the Rod and Gun Club had a little spy hole in the door. And you had to go knock, then look and see where they go open the door and let you in. I'm telling more stories than you guys.
That's what you were judged.
We're gonna go back to the other end and put the spotlight on Manny.
Well, I'll try to stick with what it was like when I was growing up over here. I've heard some real familiar tales. The club that Mr. Hatch was just talking about is where I met my wife. We've been married 51 years now. She had a date with one of my friends, and we met each other down there, and she was holding a drink in front of her and a white rat in her hand. And her boyfriend had been someplace and bought her a white rat, and when they came back to the honky tonk, the rat jumped in the drink in front of her. And so anyway, we neither one thought much of each other, but when we finally did get together, I offered her a beer, and she said, I don't drink. And I said, well, what was that in front of you? She said, well, a glass of water. And anyhow, I've never known her to drink in all these years that we did meet in the honky tonk. And anyway, the things that we used to do when I was a kid, first of all, my dad had told me some stories about it. One of them was, for instance, he and Don Farley went duck hunting one time down the graveyard pond. And anyhow, they set it up such a way that they could pot shot the birds. And they got so many they had to string them around their neck and tie them with a rope to get them home. And they carried their shotguns over their shoulder, and they hit Avenue C. They met the game warden, and he confiscated all the ducks and the guns to boot. And Dad and Don were in the duck hunting and fishing business, just like a lot of guys around here were. And so they had to get some new guns and kind of sneak out to go do some hunting and take people out duck hunting. But anyway, that was one of the stories he told me. And things had already gotten past that point by the time I was a kid. But I do remember going to the duck hunt down at the graveyard pond, which is kind of where the Arts Theater is down there, the local little theater is down in that area. And anyway, I went down there one time with a cousin of mine and a friend, and they took a shot of the same duck and came by, and they both claimed it and went out and grabbed the duck, one by one wing, one by the other, and tore the duck in half. But anyway, we got away with that. And then other things we used to do to entertain ourselves, for instance, somebody mentioned the courts over here, Spanish Village. And we didn't have much to do, and I say we, probably 14 of us kids about the same age. And so one night, my cousin, Matthew Moore, who's always had some good ideas, told us that we needed to pull up some sunflowers and stack them across the road. And then they had a whole bunch of loose gravel over there from where they'd been putting the tops on the motel and gather that up. And anyhow, the plan was that we would stack the sunflowers across the road, and when somebody stopped to move the sunflowers, that we'd throw rocks at them. And so in fact, we did do that, and got by with it several times. But we finally stopped Henry Oulsey, the constable. And so anyway, he didn't get out of the car, so we just threw rocks at him. And so he put his car in gear and busted through the sunflowers and threw them all over everything. And boy, we knew we had to head for the house. So I went one way and somebody else went another way. And one of my good buddies, Bill Oulsey, was in the crowd. And he headed home. He knew that Henry would suspect him more than anybody else. So he went home quite quick and jumped in bed. And he barely got in bed before Henry came through the front door. And he threw the cover off Bill, and he said, "Do you always sleep with your shoes on?" So, anyhow, those are the kind of things that we did for fun. I guess I need to let somebody else tell some stories, but anyway, we made up our fun, pretty much. I started driving a car when I was 11 years old, had 3 or 4 pillows under me. And I tried to continue the tradition with my own kids, and I finally got to where my grandkids are not allowed at all any place that I can find to drive when they're 11 anymore. So I had to give up on that. My oldest grandkid, I was able to get him to start driving when he was 11, but he's 20 now, and my babies are like 4 and 5. Anyway, we did have a good time. Oh, and I need to tell another story about how I used to thrill my school teacher. I've already told it to Hugo's daughter. But anyway, Hugo Isaacs, he was a man that came over here and used to stop by the house and pick up my mother's grass burrs. And but she'd throw them over the fence. And she said, "What did that man do with that?" He was a farmer from, where were you all from? Clarkwood. And anyway, he would take it and make a mix out of it to fertilize his garden. And he grew the prettiest flowers and things that you ever saw. And I used to stop by there and went to school every day and pick my school teacher up a bouquet of flowers. And she was real thrilled to get them. The last bunch I took to her, she wouldn't have because she found out I was stealing them from Mr. Mathews. Anyway, then another time, I was riding with my dad down the road on Avenue G over here, about where the Island Food, where the food store is now, and Allister Street. And my dad looks out on the mud flats that's out there and says, "Look at all those watermelons out there. Somebody's been into Mr. Isaac's watermelon patch." And I said, sure have. And so I could have told him a little more, but I didn't. Anyhow, we used to do things like that to entertain ourselves. Okay, somebody else is there.
I really don't have a lot of tales, but I do want to tell Johnny one thing, that your mother and daddy were such an influence on my life. We lived next to the Brundrettes till I was in the 2nd grade, and then we moved our house over on Lantana. And his mother was a remarkable person, and Papa was just, every day at 4 o'clock he'd come home, and I'd have to go over there and have coffee with him. And Josephine, there was 5 boys and 1 girl, and she would make 2 pies, and I can remember her cutting them in quarters, and they all got a quarter, and I just thought that was the neatest thing in the world. But very, very, she really shaped my life, your mom did, as well as Teddy, Manny's daddy, and that's it.
Okay, now I have to tell a couple of stories on Tootie. The first story, two burn stories. We burned a few things down over here. The first story, where the high school sits today, of course, our house growing up on Church Street is right next door to it. And it was all weeds and a hill, and that's how we went through to school. We'd go down the trail through the weeds and over the hill, kind of down the ditch, and then we were at school. Well, Tootie and Vivi, they were my mentors. They were both 2.5 years older than me, or Tootie wasn't quite that much older. And so we decided one day we were going to cook out in that field of weeds. So we used a piece of plywood for a grill. It didn't work out so well. We caught the world on fire. And back in that day, we still had a butane tank just on the the other side of our fence where the wooden fence is now between us and the school. So of course, kind of like Manny, slept with his shoes on. Tootie, Vivi, and I, we ran for the hills, and we got in the house, and we pulled a rollaway bed of semis out, and we got back underneath it and pulled it over on us because we were scared to death while they were trying to put the fire out in that field.
But I tried to put the fire out with grass.
Yeah, she was trying to smother it with grass. I forgot about that. We had bacon and bacon grease, by the way. That's what we were cooking out. And it didn't go so well.
Almost burnt Johnny Mathews' house down.
Anyway, that was our first fire story. And then, oh my gosh, what year was it?
In the 60s.
I want to say 60, I think I was a senior. Yes, because Debbie Teller lived with us. It was 69, 70, the year I graduated from high school. And we were hanging out at Doris and Don's all day, and some of their friends had a beach buggy. And it was freezing cold. And Doris was in the kitchen making her black-eyed peas for New Year's Day lunch. And we had been going in and out, riding up and down the sand hills, and Tootie driving with me in the front, and Debbie and Barbara Jean, her younger sister, in the back. Barbara Jean being my best friend for life forever. And so we go for our last ride before we're going back for black-eyed peas, and we came over a hill, close to White Hill is all I can remember. And the car stalled, and let me go back, we had clothespin blankets all around, and we were in army jackets and everything because it was so freezing cold that day. And the little dune buggy died, and so when Tootie went to start it again, it backfired. Well, it caught the world on fire behind us again. And here we were, clothespinned into this dune buggy, and so we are pulling and things, and your purse stayed in the car and burned down. I remember that. Your purse burned up with it. And so we are all four running in different directions trying to get to help. And I ran all the way from over by Doris and Don's, what was the name of the street? Oak Street, where Ned Teller lives close by now, and I ran shedding clothes as I went because then I was getting really hot. And I ran all the way across the football field to Edna May's, and I'll never forget as long as I live. You know how ladies wear those glasses around their neck? She got those glasses twisted, and she couldn't find the number to the fire department, and she was fumbling, and I was, trying to tell her. And the dune buggy burned to the ground, and all the weeds and all the over by White Hill and Doris and Don, we burned that up. So I guess we kind of had a fire thing back at that time. It was a fun thing until that happened, of course. But those are the things I remember about Port Aransas. Oh yeah, that's when they started no dune buggies in the dunes. Yeah. So that's one of our stories.
I'm glad Bill Smith is here today because Bill and Stinker Sims were two of our buddies. We were mostly girls in my family, but they would come over and we do things together. So it seemed like to us that every time supper was served, as 6:15, 6:30, there was the same time, here's Stinker Bill knocking on the door. And Daddy said, "Come on in, boys, we're having supper, come on." And we didn't know how they knew. Until years later, we were sitting around talking about that, and somebody said, "Don't you know? We went and told Ethel called, and she said, 'Come on over, boys, we're getting ready to eat.'" So they got well fed in those suppers. Oh, there's a friend too called Charles, and Charles Wyman was real shy compared to the rest of us. He would talk a little bit, but not much. And so we had a old turquoise army Jeep, and they said, "Come on, let's go down to the beach in the Jeep." And so we piled up with a bunch of kids, and I was driving along, and Charles, of all people, got up and said, stop the Jeep, I need to wee." I can't believe he said that. I mean, if you said it, he said, "Okay," but for him to say it, he never said stuff like that. But he got out and went, "Wee, wee." I went, "Oh my gosh." And talk about what kind of things we did. Us girls would go trolling. That meant with the oyster shell streets and stuff, we would go walking around looking for boys, and we'd go, "Come on, let's go trolling." So we went trolling. That's what we did. Amen. Daddy taught us a song called "What Ain't There Ain't No More." Have y'all ever heard that song? Some of you have? Okay. I would like for us to sing it because it's fun. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna rain no more. So how in the heck can I wash my neck if it ain't gonna rain no more? Oh, the peanuts sitting on the railroad track. His heart was all a-flutter around the thinking number 10. Two peanut butter. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna rain no more. So how in the heck can I wash my neck if it ain't gonna rain no more? Oh, the lemon sitting on the railroad track playing a serenade around the thinking number 10. Toot what? Lemonade! Lemonade! And, okay, here's my favorite one. Oh, the night was dark and dreary. The billy goat was blind. He backed into the barbed wire fence and splashed his, oh, never you mind. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. Ain't gonna rain no more. So how the heck can I wash my neck if it ain't gonna rain no more? That's all I've got for you. Oh, no, the other thing is, I asked Mark to let me tell you all, when I first found out how old I was, when I came down to Port Aransas, I'd been living here for about a year, and I called Daddy and said, Daddy, how old was I? When I first came to Port Aransas, he said, I think your mother was pregnant with you. Oh, you're alive.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to describe our old neighborhood around the corner, around the 11th and C, which, as I pointed out before, the streets didn't have names on it. Henry Oulsey lived across the street from us, and Mother would at least once a summer march over to Henry Oulsey's house because of some egregious person who had tried to run over her children on the beach. And finally, a local citizen pointed out, Mrs. McAllister, Henry Oulsey has got his hands full down on the waterfront, and he can't be patrolling that beach. But one time, a person ran over my brother. Now, not the tires over him, but under my little brother, crawling around on the beach, went under his car. And Mother decked this guy, and this guy went to see Henry Oulsey to file a complaint. And Henry Oulsey said, if you ran over one of Mrs. McAllister's children, you better be off this island by sunset. On another side of us, actually behind us, was Mr. Farrell, the butane man. I'm sure you all remember him. And we had the annual dog fight between our dog and Mr. Farrell's dog every summer. It was just scared the liver out of us. These dogs would fight to the death and be all bloody. And they didn't respond to hoses or anything. To our north lived a rancher from Crystal City named Sam Coon, who owned the Tina and the Goose Egg, two Farley brothers. Really? I don't know where the Goose Egg is now, but I think the Tina is in the hands of the museum, is it not? Anyway, they had a boat barn behind their house across the alley from us, and we used to play on those boats when they would be sitting on their trailers. At the end of the alley behind our house was Andy Dallas's garage. And Andy Dallas was our fireman, the fireman. And so he was a very important person. Then back out on the street, on 11th Street, was Oscar Gillespie's house, the JP. And beyond that, the water tower, which we would run out of water. We didn't ruin the septic system with our washing, but we'd run out of water. And my father would have to go down, usually Saturday before lunch, and prime the pump so that everybody could finish their showers before lunch. But we had so much fun. Oh, and the Mayfields lived across the street from us. One time when we were kids, I gave William Mayfield a haircut with Mother's manicure scissors. And it was tray chic. It was, like little bits cut out of his head. His mother came tearing over and just really let Mother have it. But the Carters were around the corner who built the chapel, famous little chapel. And Ed Tarrant didn't he live where Charlie Brown lives? And it was just a lovely little neighborhood. We all played together, and of course there were so many of us that we didn't really need any friends, although we did have 2 really good friends across the street in the summer. We didn't have a dial telephone. We had a telephone that you picked up and asked the operator for a number. And our friends across the street's number was 103, and our number was 246. And even though they were just across the street, we called them back and forth all day long. And the operator, who of course knew everyone in town, one day finally said, she was always very gracious, but one day with great resignation, when I picked up the phone and asked for 103, she said, "Can't you kids just go across the street?" And of course she knew where everybody was, so if my grandmother picked up the phone to call somebody and that person weren't at home, the operator knew where that person was and would put her through with that. When I was about 15, they named the streets in town, and my grandfather McAllister was so formidable that we thought that Allister Street had been misspelled. We said, well, now wait a minute, A-L-I, that's not right. Anyway, to this day, I'm embarrassed to say that I have to stop and think what the name of streets are because my entire youth was spent without street names. I'll pass it.
Okay, Tabby has mentioned that water tank twice, so I can't let this go by. In 1961, after Hurricane Carla, my dad, Woody, got the salvage rights to that water tank. And many years, I didn't even realize this, he had it torn down and stored at Woody's Boat Basin in the boat barns. When he leased Woody's Boat Basin in '72, he hauled it all to Goliad, the first little ranch he bought. I still didn't know about it. From there, when they sold Woody's Boat Basin in '82, he then moved all of that cypress lumber from Goliad to Medina in the hill country. It was in Medina that I discovered the cypress water tank in the top of Daddy's barn. My kitchen table is built out of the cypress from the Port Aransas water tank. And about 3 months after I got the cypress from Daddy, I didn't really ask him. I said, Daddy, I'm going to need some of that out of the top of the barn. And it was real thick. I won't go into all that, but and Marie worked at City Hall for many years. And Marie called me one day and she said, Sylvia, you are not going to believe what I found today when we were looking for a file in City Hall. We came across this file and they found some stuff misfiled in it, and it was pictures of the water